All right, there, everyone. Ratings for the late night liberals continued to collapse throughout 2018. That is what we'll be talking about on today's video. But first, a big shout out to all of our new viewers. If this is your first time here, I post 2 videos a day analyzing current events and a lot of some pretty awesome conservative trends. So if you would, please smack that bell and subscribe button. It'll be an absolute privilege to have you as one of our regular viewers of this channel. All right, so the ratings are in for late night television for 2018, and the situation is really pretty dire. Every single one of the 3 late night shows experienced declining viewership throughout the year. Viewership for Jimmy Kimmel Live declined by 11% throughout the year. Likewise, The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon saw a drop of 10% in its viewership. And The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, they triumphed. They only lost 1% of their viewers. Every single one of the 3 late night shows experienced declining viewership. When it comes to individual demographics, it gets even worse. All 3 shows have declined by double digits when it comes to the coveted 18 to 49-year-old audience demo. So when we compare their 2018 ratings with those of 2017, Colbert lost 13% of his viewership from this demographic. Kimmel lost 18%, and Fallon lost an astonishing 21%. Now, this decline in viewership for 2018 is actually part of a much larger implosion in late-night television's ratings overall. It may surprise you to find out that overall late-night viewership for ABC, NBC, and CBS combined is barely breaking 8 million viewers total. Now, just to give you a sense of how far things have plummeted for late-night television, not so long ago, Jay Leno, who replaced the great Johnny Carson, was bringing in 6 million viewers all on his own on any given evening. And before Leno, Carson could easily score 9 million viewers on a single night. In fact, nearly 20 million people watched his Tonight Show farewell. So things are so bad now that the total combination of all 3 late night shows, the total combination of viewership is basically what Jay Leno could get on his own, let alone Carson. I mean, the viewership for one Carson night would beat the viewership for all 3 late night TV shows today combined. That's how bad late night television viewership has plummeted. Now, one of the key reasons why we've seen such a dramatic drop in viewership is because of the relatively recent pardonization of late night television. Whereas Johnny Carson, Jay Leno had wide appeal, making fun of presidents, but in such a way that was in just good fun. Now the partisan divide is just so wide that producers are actually targeting a single political side. That's what seemed to work for Stephen Colbert of CBS. He made mocking and ridiculing and excoriating Trump and his supporters a centerpiece of his act. In so doing, he actually quickly overtook Jimmy Fallon of NBC in the ratings. And so what Colbert effectively did was he changed the business model of late night television. As a result of Colbert's success in taking over first place among the 3 major late night shows, the old late night business model that sought to entertain people of all political persuasions has been effectively replaced by a hyper-partisan approach that seeks to actively engage only a single political demographic, in this case, the anti-Trump liberal secularist persuasion, subjecting any and all pro-Trump conservative persuasions as objects of constant scorn and ridicule. You might remember that when Jimmy Kimmel was asked about whether he was worried about losing Republican viewers by virtue of his own attempt at attracting the same anti-Trump liberal base that Colbert had effectively co-opted into his audience, Kimmel basically said, good riddance. Actually, he said, rather than saying good riddance, I just simply say riddance. Which again, is just frankly so unclever on his part, so uncreative. It's just so intellectually lazy. What Kimmel is getting at here is that he and his producers recognize that when he says anything inflammatory against Trump, his ratings go up. Same with Colbert. And so the business model that the producers of these late show programs are pushing is one that goes after a niche market, particularly political niche markets. And this appears to be what Colbert and Kimmel have over Jimmy Fallon at The Tonight Show, who's generally stayed away from political niche markets. But as a result, he's seen his ratings decline. And so what Colbert and Kimmel are trying to do is become the late night kings of this ever more partisan and yet ever more diminishing and dwindling market share. And that's the price that they're paying in all of this. In the name of appealing to a hyper-partisanized audience, late night television is by definition actually intentionally shrinking their audience. They're intentionally shrinking the overall audience of late night television in the name of becoming number one or a monopoly over this late night market. But there's another price they've all had to pay as well. And this one I think hits more at the heart of the cultural significance of late night television. You see, historically speaking, comedy has always provided one of the most profound and whimsical insights into the social and political norms of the day for any culture. The neat thing about, for example, classical comedy in ancient Greece is the keen insight that it gave to society, not only in their own time, but for us contemporary audiences as well. So, for example, the playwright Aristophanes, his Lysistrata, critiqued the ancient Greek notion that women were sexually unbridled and undisciplined. That was a widely held belief among the ancient Greeks, that women, as opposed to men, couldn't control themselves sexually. And what the Lysistrata does, this play, is it actually offers a very whimsical critique of this perspective. So the story takes place during the Peloponnesian War, where all the men of the city were fighting. And so the women gathered together to plot how they might bring the war to an end, the women of the city there. And so they collectively decide to go on a sex strike until the men of the city agreed to end the war. And of course, the humorous twist in the play is that it's the men who go crazy during the sex strike and decide to stop fighting. It's the women who were disciplined enough to maintain the strike indefinitely, at least until they stop fighting. So as it turns out, it's the men with the unbridled passions. You see, classical comedy employed irony and satire to make profound social commentary. And when late night television was at its best, that's precisely what it did. It showed us our culture in new and whimsical ways, in no way that offended anyone, but in ways that delighted us and indeed enriched us. But now with the hyper-partisanization of late night television, you'll notice that gone is any semblance of profundity or cleverness or wittiness or enrichment. Instead, we get increasingly lewd and vulgar rants that are just aimed. They're not aimed at providing any kind of cultural critique. The combination of lewd routines and virtue posturing isn't aimed at converting anyone. It's aimed at the already converted. This is the consequence of partisanized ratings. Stephen Colbert isn't trying to convince anyone. He's not trying to enlighten anyone. He's mocking Trump for the benefit of people who already hate him. And as a result, the quality of comedy and the richness of cultural insight have just completely disappeared from late night television. Instead, these so-called comedians lower themselves to the kind of shock comedy you found, in the likes of a Howard Stern of old and others, where cultural critique takes a backseat to the pornification of humor. So, for example, I'm sure a lot of you remember the disgustingly crass and explicitly lewd so-called joke Colbert used to describe the relationship between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, all to the adoring cheers of his increasingly hyper-partisan audience. So all of this is to say is that the ever-dwindling ratings for late-night television appear to be really nothing more than the sad but inevitable consequence of the vitriolic partisanization of the media reflected in the regressive and declining aptitudes of the late-night hosts, along with their comparably degenerate and debauched liberal audiences. The demise of late-night television simply proves yet again that anything and everything that liberalism touches turns to absolute and utter crap. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Click on either our PayPal or Patreon links below. Become a supporter of this channel and help us to continue to analyze current events in light of awesome conservative trends so that you can personally and professionally flourish. God bless.